Hi class, welcome to week 9 of our online English 2010 class. All right, first of all, let's do a little backtracking. I sent out an email where I asked you all to please finish all the tutorials in modules 7 and 8. Those are done and in. I will be grading them this week. I will not be grading anything from previous to module 9. Anything that in weeks 1 through 9, I just can't grade anything else back there. So all of the makeup work that you've asked to do needs to be in and is in. So we will just move forward. I appreciate those of you who kept your conference time with me too. Again, that's something I can't make up. I've got 3 other classes that are doing conferences this week too, so I won't be able to make up those grades. All right, this week we start talking about 2 of the 3 persuasive theories that we want to talk about in English 2010. The first one is called stasis theory. And stasis theory was developed again thousands of years ago by Aristotle, where he wants to talk about how 2 opposing sides can create agreement, okay? And he developed 4 stasis questions. They are fact, definition, quality, and policy. Your assignment this week will be to work through stasis and Toulmin with your topics. And most of you have gotten back to me. If you were a little iffy on your topics during our conference, most of you have gotten back to me and you're all ready to go on these topics. So let me talk you through stasis. If you will open that assignment up while I talk through this with you, I think you'll have better success with it. So I'm going to use an example of my own to talk through the stasis question. So I'm going to use I'll use climate change to talk about stasis theory. So fact, did something happen? Well, in my opinion, the Earth is warming, and we can measure that. There are facts surrounding it. How did it begin? What are its causes? Can be debatable, but most scientists agree that it is increasing and it's not just a cyclical natural temperature rising of the climate. Can it be changed? How did we obtain our data, and are sources reliable? So I would say the majority of climate scientists on the planet agree that here's my cat, sorry, she wants to help. Most of the climate scientists on the planet agree that the Earth is warming and that it's probably human caused. Now, for the sake of our example today, let's just say that you and I can agree that this is the case, right? And so we have reached stasis on the question of fact with regards to climate change. All right, that's great. If we can agree on the facts, you and your opposition, then we can move on to the next question of stasis, which is define or definition. What's the nature of this problem? What kind of problem is it? To what larger class of things does this belong to? What are its parts? How are they related? Who or what is influencing our definition of this problem? Why are these sources influencing our definition? So if we look at the nature of this, it's a science problem. It's a problem that affects most people globally. So it's a big problem. And it's related to other classes of problems like global warming, cyclical cooling and heating of the planet. What are its parts? We can get into the weeds with this as far as definition, you and me, and we may not agree. And if we don't agree, then we need to halt our argument and go back to facts and start laying another more groundwork, so that we can come to an agreement and reach stasis with definition. If you agree with me that these are the definitions of climate change, then we can move on to the questions of quality. Is it a good or bad thing? How serious is this problem? Who does it affect? How or why are these beliefs influencing our determination of what this issue is? So quality, is it a good or bad thing? Well, most people across the planet agree that this is a bad thing, climate change. Now, as a thought experiment, let's think about this for a minute. Perhaps we live in Siberia, and climate scientists say, this is just speculation, right? I'm just trying to throw in some speculation here. All right. And climate scientists say pretty soon, next 50 years, perhaps Siberia will be the breadbasket. And instead of being a frozen wonderland, it will be a place where we can raise crops. All right, and I don't know anything about that. I'm just speculating. And so quality is often a place where arguments fall apart and there isn't an ability to come to stasis, right? There's not ability to meet. If you live on the coasts and the coastal waters are rising, it doesn't matter that Siberia might be a breadbasket. This is affecting you personally. And so you want everyone to take greater care with climate change and try to find a way to solve it, right? So quality is often a place where stasis falls apart. If you can reach stasis with the question of quality, is it a good or bad thing? And most people think it's a bad thing, then we can move on to the questions of policy. Should action be taken? And again, this is often where stasis falls apart between two arguing sides. You might say, one side may say, I don't think there's much we can do. Another side may say, I think we should all drive electric cars, or we should all use no more plastic grocery bags, right? There's all kinds of policy changes that people are proposing to try to help climate change. All right, that's a big, big topic that I talked through with you about stasis. So I want to talk to you about how I want you to organize this assignment. So I can see you organizing this assignment with headings of just the stasis questions. And then I'd like you to go through each of those questions and answer them with a bullet point. I don't want those bullet points to just be a sentence. I want some critical thinking in your responses. So as your grader, I will get probably grumpy if you're just giving me one sentence answers, and you probably won't do very well. I want you to think through those stasis questions and answer with 3 sentences or so each of the questions that you can ask. Now, some of those questions may be really hard at this point for you to answer because you're not there yet, but I think the purpose of this assignment is for you to start thinking about these questions and how you might go forward and answer them. Okay? Stasis assignment. That's one of the assignments for you this weekend, or for this week, for you to talk about stasis theory, one of our persuasive theories. The next assignment you'll have this week is called our Toulmin assignment, and it's the second persuasive theory of the 3 that we'll talk about this year in this semester. So Stephen Toulmin was an attorney in the 1950s who wanted to break down argument and have argument be more audience-based. And he wanted to focus on assumptions that audience and the rhetor, or the arguer, audience and arguer, have with their topic. So I'm just going to read the assignment description and we'll talk through it a little bit. Using the Toulmin schema, that just means Toulmin theory, you will outline and organize your final project, your PRE. Where stasis theory helps identify places where you need to research further, Toulmin helps organize your arguments and your claims. In English 2010, we use the Toulmin schema to test our arguments and to develop a detailed outline of our PREs. One of the reasons Toulmin is useful in this process is that it focuses primarily on what we can validate with research instead of relying on the emotional responses that often limit our research and discussion about many topics. We can then add pathos, or the appeals to emotion, that are useful to our specific audience as we prepare to write the essay. So here's how Toulmin is outlined. Now, Toulmin is much more complicated than how I've outlined here. If any of you are going to law school, you'll probably have some some interactions with both Stasis and Toulmin. But for this assignment, I've just broken Toulmin down into these questions: claim, reason, assumptions, backing, conditions of rebuttal, and then qualifier. So first I want you to start with a claim, your research question, one of the topics that will support your whole topic, like one of the subtopics that support your whole topic. Most of you, when you do this assignment, will just start with your major topic. So I just want you to write that down as either a research question, a developing thesis statement. Then you're going to write 3 because clauses, at least 3 because clauses, and I'll go over that in just a minute. Then I want you to think about the assumptions that you might have. What points of agreement do you and your audience share? And then according to your research, what are your presumed assumptions about your audience has and why those are? Then I want you to think about backing. Now I know this is some new vocabulary for you, and that's okay. Toulmin brings in some different vocabulary. Basically, backing is just your research. This is a place for you to list evidence, both personal and evidence that you've researched, that support your claims and your reasons. This will be the longest portion of this assignment and the longest portion of your PRE. Again, you can use a personal anecdote here. You can do some brainstorming techniques and list those here, and then cited research that you've actually come across. Then you're going to have your conditions of rebuttal, which means your opposition. What are other people saying about your topic? How will they attack your position? What are their strongest points? And be sure to talk about those points fairly and neutrally and in detail as you gather and think about your opposition. And then finally, Toulmin talks about a qualifier, which is a revised statement based on both your opposition and the conditions of rebuttal and your research the backing that you've listed here. What can you still realistically argue? Are there ways to adjust your thesis or working thesis statement to include some ideas from the opposition as a way to counter them by changing your thesis? So I want to explain what that means in simpler terms. So there are very few things that we actually prove in life, certainly that we prove in academia. And because there are very few things that we prove, it's important that we remove language like always and never from our research topics, okay? Because so few things are always, right? And so few things are never. So few ideas, so few topics are always or never. So with Toulmin's qualifiers, what that means is you're going to bring in ideas like maybe, most likely, probably, sometimes. This language doesn't weaken your argument. This language actually strengthens your argument because your opposition will not be able to just knock it over because things are rarely always, things are rarely never, all right? So I will give you an example of that using just an example I think of for myself here. Hang on. Going back to what we were talking about with climate change, I want to take just a part of that and use it as one of my claims. So for example, perhaps my topic is still climate change, but one of my claims may be all states should stop using plastic grocery bags. Okay, that will be my claim. All states should stop using plastic grocery bags. Okay, as you think about that, the next part of this assignment is these are because clauses of your working thesis statement. So your claim would be all states should remove plastic grocery bags because plastics are ending up in our rivers and oceans and are hurting the wildlife in the waters, in the rivers and oceans. All right. if you think about that, and then you can come up with a couple other because clauses. I'm just going to, for this example, and because we're already at 15 minutes, stop there. So assumptions. What are some of the assumptions you and your audience have? Well, one assumption I can think of is hurting the environment is a bad thing. That kind of goes back to stasis a little bit. That's an assumption that you and your audience have to share, right? So anything that you as an arguer, you being persuasive, you have to connect to the values of your resistant audience. So one value might be that you both agree that plastics in the ocean that break down into microplastics are a bad thing because fish and wildlife ingest them and it can kill them. All right. That's an assumption you can make. Some assumptions are stated, some assumptions are not stated. That would be an assumption that I think would need to be clarified and stated. And then the backing would be, what research can you find that talks about plastics being harmful to wildlife? And then you can get into the conditions of rebuttal, and that would be your opposition. And your opposition might be, it is too expensive to take out plastic garbage or grocery bags out of all states. We're used to them. We're not going to be able to take those out. So you'll have to talk about oppositional points about removing plastic grocery bags. Then when you think about the qualifier, that would be, I think my original statement would be all states should remove grocery bags, right? Plastic grocery bags. Your qualifier would then be states should try to remove plastic grocery bags and instead provide reusable bags in grocery stores. Okay, that would be a qualifier and a revised thesis statement. Now, I know still Stasis and Toulmin can be a little tricky. I want you to know I'll be very generous with you as you try these assignments. I will be available to talk with you this week, but you'll have to set up an appointment because I'm conferencing with my 3 other classes this week. So if you want to talk through Stasis and Toulmin with me, make an appointment and I'm happy to do that. There will be no takeaway this week. I just want you to work on Stasis and Toulmin and start the research for your final project. Thanks.